Well, welcome everybody. This is a presentation of the Town Center project. And first off, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee. Bambi Miller, I'm just going around the room. Bambi Miller, Pat Jenkins in the back, John Tappan, Corey Bloomquist, Ben Jeans, and myself. So welcome. We're going to go through a presentation. It's a little bit less than half an hour. And after that, we're going to do questions. Also, Kathleen Porter, Robert Robisek and Kathleen Porter from LVA are here, Will Valley Bressinger, and helped us with the architectural drawings and stuff. So welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Oh, great to be here?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see after the meeting.
We're going to
start off, Corey's going to start the presentation, then John's going to do some of the costing, and then we're going to go back to Corey, and then we'll have questions. So. Ready?
Yes.
Oh, we're going to do that one off.
We are.
So people can
Yeah, so we can see.
That's a fine advice. Well, thank you for everyone for braving the cold and snow to get here on this fine Tuesday evening. We've got a lot to cover, so I will make my introductions brief. Scott beat me to the punch about introducing the committee, so you've met everyone already. But those are our names in case you want to write them down. We also want to thank the members of the Facilities Committee, and I encourage everybody to look at their work on the town's website. A lot of great work was done in assessing the state of the town buildings by the Facilities Committee. Today we're going to be reviewing the problems with the town center buildings, how to solve those problems, the conceptual designs that we've developed with the Valley Bressinger, the costs and bond, and the advantages of the plan that the select board has come up with. Oh, I was supposed to press that 5 more times. There we go. All right. First, let's make sure we know what buildings we're talking about. We're going to be addressing these 5 buildings in the current town center, and that's the Lee Public Library, the Town Hall Annex, the Historical Society Museum, and this is the official name. Get to it?
Wait for it.
There we go. Tool shed with tramp room. All right. My controller is really jumping around today, so forgive me. All right, let's move on to the Lee Public Library. Zoom in there to begin. In 1962, the Central Schoolhouse was moved up Lee Hook Road to become the Lee Library. This 120-year-old building has seen several additions. The most recent was 22 years ago, and demand for library services continues to grow. According to the 2017 state statistics, the Lee Library hosts over 350 programs a year, has over 19,000 visits per year, has a collection of 25,000 volumes, including print, audio, and video, has an annual circulation of over 37,000 volumes, and that includes over 12,000 children's volumes and over 5,000 ebooks and downloadable audiobooks. Yet space is increasingly limited, with story time spilling out of the story corner and into the aisles. Note that these shelves are too high for a children's section, but the library has had to grow up rather than out due to its lack of space. Larger programs are held in the basement. That's my son in the corner. He's the only child I can legally photograph in the library. But that library, or that basement, is not ADA accessible. That's Americans with Disabilities Act compliant. There you can see the 2 stairways that allow you to access that basement. This room is not insulated. It doubles as storage space, and it can quickly run short on room. Here you can see what you have to do when you photograph other people's kids. So those are sufficiently anonymized. Other events which are held in the Central Schoolhouse can be distracting to other patrons and also quickly fill up the space available. The Central Schoolhouse also doubles as storage, and the staff break area, you can see there in the corner, not many libraries have a stove next to these stacks. The building needs electrical upgrades, including lighting transition to LED. It needs a greater number of bathrooms, insulated windows, heat recovery ventilation added, multiple ADA compliance changes, not only the basement, and reinforcement to its floors to handle library stack loads. Now let's talk about the town hall. Our town hall was recently added to the State Register of Historic Places. This status doesn't place any restrictions on the town of Lee, but does make it easier to qualify for grants. This Greek Revival style building once acted as a meeting space, but it has since filled up with the administrative functions of the town. This includes the clerk, the tax collector, welfare, finance, and administration. Once used for dances and select board meetings, the town hall is now cut up into several cubicles. This makeshift office arrangement lacks room for meetings or confidential conversations, such as requests for tax exemptions or employee performance reviews, which must be confidential according to state RSAs. There's no way to limit access to staff desks or records, and there is not enough room for records. In fact, records are split between the town hall annex, the public safety complex, and this storage container, which has no temperature or humidity controls, making it a poor place to store records that the town is mandated to keep. Accessible meeting space consists of a folding table in the middle of an open room. This means that meetings disturb work in adjacent cubicles. The committee space upstairs is inaccessible to anyone unable to navigate the steps, and room for public meetings is vital. These volunteer commissions and committees perform valuable work for the town. Because of this, meeting space should be made a priority. Next, let's talk about the physical state of this pre-Civil War building. Here you can see some of the temporary fixes under the town hall floor. The root cause of this damage, the dirt crawl space with limited ventilation, needs to be addressed. These conditions have led to rot and add to the discomfort of working in the town hall by making for frigid floors, requiring space heaters, such as this one I took a picture of a few weeks ago, which leads me to energy efficiency. The town hall also uses window AC units instead of an efficient climate control system. It has non-insulated windows and an aging and inefficient boiler. The latest engineering report noted that the electrical was beyond its service life and should be replaced as soon as possible. The building has multiple ADA compliance issues, structural issues, and lacks separate male and female restrooms. It also lacks a heat recovering ventilation unit. Instead, the building is ventilated through its porous insulation, which extends from the floors to the roof, such as the daylight shining through the eaves here. But on the bright side, this does help to cool the town's computer server, which is what the fan seen here is cooling. Next, let's talk about the second home to the town's administrative functions, the Town Hall Annex. The Town Hall Annex was built in 1950 by volunteers on donated church land using timber from the town forest. It originally served as a firehouse. It now houses the planning and zoning and code enforcement offices. This building also suffers from a lack of adequate storage space, inefficient mechanicals including its boiler, a lack of proper ventilation, non-insulated windows, an aging and inefficient electrical system, poor lighting, multiple ADA and code compliance issues, and dangerous back into the road parking. And I'll utilize Mr. Brown's laser pointer. Right there, you can see how you have to back into Mast Way. This building would not be used in its current capacity if there were adequate space in Town Hall to put all of the administrative functions together. Now let's talk about the Historical Society Museum. The South Lee Freight Depot, also on the State Register of Historic Places, was built around 1874 and once stood at the junction of what is now Route 125 and Route 152. It's now home to the Lee Historical Society Museum. This building lacks sufficient display space for the Historical Society's collection, which means some of it resides in a damp basement without adequate ventilation. That basement is cracked, going inwards, and leaking. The second floor sags due to inadequate support, and heat is provided by a direct vent propane heater, right there, with no other climate control. And finally, the tool shed with tramp room. This is our good news on the report of town buildings. Believe it or not, this is also on the State Register of Historic Places. It's one of only a few known tramp rooms to exist in the state. But this structure continues to be used to store town equipment, and while it needs some repairs, according to that same structural report, the repairs needed are modest. And finally, I'll address the parking lot. The parking lot can easily be as cramped as the buildings. In this case, no special event or meeting was being held. This was a few weeks ago Friday, after other families had left story time at the library. I took this photo before I left the parking lot with my son. There was one, maybe two empty spaces. In summary, all of the buildings at our town center have upgrades and repairs that need to be made. The most heavily used, the town hall annex, and the library are poorly insulated, energy efficient, and have several code compliance issues, and most importantly, lack the necessary space to serve the needs of staff and the public. So how do we solve these problems? After evaluating 11 possible options, the Facilities Committee recommended purchasing land from the Lee Church and pursuing a plan that both renovates the existing buildings, solving the problems associated with each, and creating a new office building and library addition to address the space constraints. The land purchase cost just over $180,000, much less than the $250,000 approved by voters. But why not just renovate, you may ask? If you add up the square footage of the town hall, and the annex, and the storage container, and the storage space used at the public safety complex, you get a total of 3,900 gross square feet. When the Town Center Vision Committee, working with LaValle Brensinger Architects, calculated the program needs for all the town administrative functions, that's everything that needs to go on in those buildings, it came to, or our group came to 4,900 gross square feet. So some basic math shows that you simply need, more space. This is what happens when you have really intricate animated slides. You know, you lay out these plans for cool things to pop up and impress everybody, and then you zoom past them. So you need 20% more space than the current buildings have to offer, and you can't get there by renovating. In fact, if you were to renovate, adding bathrooms, making ADA and code compliance changes, you make the space problems even worse. You shrink the usable space in all of these buildings. The same logic applies to the library. You can't fix everything without reducing the usable space of the library, making the crowding and the overlapping use issues even worse. Instead, the Select Board's vision proposes to build new and renovate. This takes advantage of the lower cost of renovation, about 60% less per square foot than new construction, while giving the town the added square footage it needs by building new where needed. So let's move on to the conceptual design for the town center. This is what you've all seen on Facebook, right? We're familiar with this. So here is the proposed layout. And here I should underscore that this is conceptual. Oh, see, an animation worked. Things could change as this process moves forward, but we're confident that we've gotten the space needs correct, that we've thought through the trade-offs in the site layout, and gotten a realistic, professionally estimated build costs with enough contingency that we can plan to spend less than the proposed budget. By keeping our buildings on one site, this plan takes advantage of economies of scale. These buildings can share well and septic systems, be connected through a common telecom network, and share meeting spaces. This plan also leverages economies of scale in construction. By addressing the town center space in a single project, we allow crews to stay on the site to do multiple jobs, cutting costs compared to multi-site or multi-stage plan. These buildings would also share a 78-space parking lot, set 50 feet behind a green space. The two driveways would replace 175 feet of paved frontage. That's the frontage that the current town center complex occupies. Those driveways would provide 2 points of access one next to the current town hall, and one opposite Wednesday Hill Road, as recommended by the Department of Transportation. A fire cistern could be added to this space, which would address a need that's already part of the capital improvement plan. And the buildings have been cited to allow for expansion, so we're not boxed in like in the current layout. Next, let's zoom in on the Lee Public Library. The proposed addition to the library would extend the library building eastward and add 3,900 square feet to the existing footprint. And this has been cited to allow for potential future expansion. Here's a view of the front of the expanded library. So some folks have had trouble kind of discerning where this is. This is the central schoolhouse, the part of the library that sticks farthest forward now. It would continue to be the farthest forward part of the building. The new library layout creates dedicated office space for staff, a central circulation desk, new fully accessible restrooms, the New Hampshire room, a meeting space and a special collection space for local and state books, a periodicals reading area, a space for expanded collections of audio, adult fiction, nonfiction, there's nonfiction, and public computers. A new display area would be located next to the central circulation desk, which would allow the library staff to see nearly all of the new library from a single workstation, which would be adjacent to a new periodicals and reading area. You can see what the inside of that proposed space looks like here. The new design would further create a dedicated young adult section and a children's section that would be separated from the adult area, making children's programs less distracting to other patrons. All right. Then this one? Yes, there we go. Okay. Here's a rendering of the children's library. Notice that unlike the current library, all the shelves are accessible to small children, and there's a dedicated story time space, so no more sitting in the aisles. The central schoolhouse would become a dedicated gathering and event space with 2 additional restrooms, a kitchenette that can serve both needs of the public and the library staff. This meeting room, along with the New Hampshire room, could be used not only for library-run events, but for town functions, events organized by the events organized by the community, capitalizing on this shared town center vision. There we go. The renovation of the existing library is one of 2 areas of this project where the town can leverage funding sources outside of the town. Because of the historical nature of the central schoolhouse and its proposed use as a community meeting area, it's well suited for grant applications. The Lee Public Library Community Center Foundation has also pledged to raise the funds for this portion of the library building. With funds already secured, it already has funds secured to go towards elements of the project, like the children's area. So this addition, and the addition here is shown in blue, would improve access to the library's collection and meeting spaces for all residents. No longer would you have things that are inaccessible to folks who can't navigate stairs. And that collection would be allowed to be retained and continue to grow, whereas right now, when new books are brought into the library, old volumes are discarded. Let's move on to the municipal office building. This 4,840 square foot building would provide a single home for the town center's customer service functions. No more splitting functions across buildings or using containers for town files. Here too, the siding has been designed to allow for expansion, reducing future expansion costs. The new municipal office building will feature up-to-date electrical, mechanical, and insulation, providing a purpose-built office environment. The layout would better serve residents of Lee by creating a number of service windows, providing more convenient access to common services like the clerk, planning and zoning, and administration. When finalized, and again here I should note that these are conceptual drawings, this layout would provide for secure record storage, improved security, and improved staff coordination, while allowing privacy for focused work or confidential discussions, ensuring that the town would be in compliance with state law. This approach, oh wait, this is also conceptual. My animations are working. This would allow functions currently spread across 4 structures to be consolidated into a single, modern, efficient, code-compliant, and fully accessible building. But with a new office building, what would happen to Town Hall? This would return our Town Hall to its original function as a public meeting space at the heart of our New England tradition of self-governance. The clerk's office area could become a dedicated office with file storage space for committees and commissions. The second floor would also be renovated and available to those who can access it. And of course, the renovation would fix the floor and crawl space, replace the electrical and mechanicals, add insulation, and repair the structure. And a kitchenette for refreshments would make it a perfect place to host dances, just as it did in 1842. The Town Hall is the second area of our project where Lee can leverage funding sources outside of the town. The town hall can't be renovated until the municipal office building is complete and staff are relocated. During that time, the Select Board has proposed setting aside $200,000 over 2 years in a separate capital reserve fund that would go towards the renovation of the town hall. By dedicating these funds towards a project but not fully funding the project, the town would be able to pursue grants such as the LCHIP program or the Moose Plate program, which are usually awarded as matching funds. This approach, just like the library renovation, reduces the cost of this project to the town and allows Lee to build on the efforts of the Heritage Commission, who worked to add our town hall to the State Register of Historic Places. The Historical Society Museum could also pursue grant funding thanks to its State Register status, but only after the town hall project is complete. We don't want to compete against our own grant applications. The Historical Society needs to be moved away from the library in order for the library to expand. And by doing this, it would solve one of the museum's problem it has with its foundation, as it would be placed on a new basement on the east side of the new complex. The annex is slated to be moved in this concept, but it's being further examined by the committee with an eye towards driving down the costs of the project. Finally, there's the tool shed. We believe its modest structural issues can be addressed with local labor. So these steps are all laid out in the basic approach to the stages of construction, renovation, and relocation. The first step would involve soliciting competitive bids for the final design and the construction of the buildings. After moving the Historical Society, the Korean War Memorial, the construction would begin on the municipal office building and the library addition. Stage 3 would see the town hall functions moved into the new municipal office building and the library functions move into the library addition. Stage 4 would see a renovation of the current library space once its funding is secured from the Lee Public Library Community Center Foundation. And finally, stage 5 would see the library occupy that renovated space and addition. And finally, the town hall renovations would begin after its grant money is secured. With that, I'll turn things over to John Tappan to discuss the costs and the bond.
The conceptual project budget is based on an estimate from the project architect and 3 estimates from 2 independent cost consultants and by-owner cost estimates from vendors. The library addition costs $1.2 million. Municipal office building costs $1.56 million. And site development, which includes land clearing, relocating the museum, repurposing the annex, and installing utilities, parking lots, walkways, and landscaping, costs $997,000. And contingency at 10% is $368,000. And bond counsel may be up to $14,000, for a total of $4.06 million. The separately budgeted town hall renovation is expected to cost $398,000, and renovation of the existing library building is expected to cost $300,000. Funding sources. The town has existing capital reserve funds to draw on, and the balance will come from a bond. The total cost is $4.06 million. From the town building's capital reserve fund, the capital improvement plan shows expected withdrawals of $34,000 for town center buildings in the next 2 years, and leaving a balance of $93,000, an additional $95,000 could be withdrawn for a total of $129,000. At the beginning of the coming fiscal year, the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund will have a balance of $375,000, and there is $60,000 in the Library Capital Reserve Fund originally intended for the Library Community Center and now available for building or adding to the current library. The remainder, $3.495 million, would come from a bond. A level principal 20-year bond is proposed. The repayment of principal, shown in blue, is nearly the same each year, and as the remaining loan balance decreases, the interest payments, shown in orange, also decrease. The net interest cost for 20-year bonds issued by the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank on January 9th was 3.05%, a decrease from the 3.24% this past June. An interest rate of 3.5% is used here. If the bond were issued in the second half of fiscal year 2020, there would be no payment until fiscal year 2021. Tax rate increase for the town center project. This chart shows the tax rate amounts that support the current debt service and the amounts that would support the proposed town center project cost. The reference level is the current tax rate, which includes 15 cents to pay for the public safety complex bond retiring in 2023 and 8 cents to pay for the transfer station bond retiring in fiscal year 2024. These amounts decrease each year. In fiscal year 2020, the town center bond would add 16 cents, and the appropriation to the new renovating town hall capital reserve fund would add 11 cents to the tax rate. This amount becomes 32 cents the following year. When the first repayment of principal occurs in fiscal year 2021, there's also predicted to be an increase in operating and maintenance costs due to the increase in town building area, floor area, and an increase in insurance premiums for the increased building value. This is estimated to add 11 cents to the tax rate. In fiscal year 2020, the project tax rate increase above today's tax rate is 26 cents. The largest increase is in fiscal year 2021, when the added debt service plus increased operating and maintenance plus the appropriation for town hall renovation will have added $1.04 to the current tax rate. In fiscal year 2022, this amount drops to 69 cents. What effect would this tax rate increase have on the tax bill? This year, the median house value in Lee is $229,000, $229,500. This property valuation would see a tax increase of $58 in fiscal year 2020 and $237 in fiscal year 2021, dropping to $156 in fiscal year 2022. These amounts are not cumulative. They're relative to the baseline of today. And back to Paul.
Thank you, John. All right, to quickly wrap things up, I want to talk about the advantage of this plan and moving forward on the town center now. This plan allows us to be proactive rather than reactive, addressing the problems with our town's buildings before they become worse, potentially displacing town employees. Can't get enough of this photo of the rotting floor. It's unwise to continue spending money on heating uninsulated floors, heating uninsulated basements, powering window AC units, and other temporary fixes. Investing in a comprehensive, well-planned solution to our town's needs would break the cycle of Band-Aid solutions. This plan also allows our town to preserve its history in a way that makes financial sense, only building new when we need to. By pursuing outside preservation funding, we can leverage the history of our town to the benefit of the town's present. That is a receipt for the hobo shed. So that's, people asked what that was last time. This plan also takes advantage of economies of scale in several ways. It creates one larger construction project rather than several small-scale renovations. And it creates a unified town center with shared infrastructure and shared meeting spaces, reducing build-out costs when compared to other options. It keeps emergency and non-emergency services separate, honoring the 50-year plan for this public safety complex. And finally, this town center truly centers our town, keeping Lee a distinctly New England place by preserving our traditional town center, a town hall, a library, a church, and a school, all in one place. So to review, proactive, not reactive. This increases the energy efficiency of our buildings. It preserves our town's history in a way that makes sense. It takes advantage of economies of scale, separates those emergency services from the non-emergency services, and keeps Lee centered. All right, with that I want to thank everyone. We encourage you all to visit leetowncenter.org. We're asking folks to sign up for our email newsletter there. You can also follow the Lee Town Center Project on Facebook, and you can share your feedback with us there or on the forum on the website. We'll now try our best to answer all of your questions and hear your concerns. Scott, do you want to moderate things?
If you want to, you can go ahead.
Oh, I'll gladly. I'm not going to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
In the new library, in the old library, there's a basement, which is being way overused, but in the new library, you didn't say anything about what that basement's used for.
Yeah, the existing basement would stay there. There is no slated use because there's no way to make it accessible to everyone. So its use right now is grandfathered, is that correct?
In the he's talking about the new. He's talking about the new one. The new one. The new.
Well, I was addressing the old basement or the new basements don't have a slated purpose other than storage, and that's due to accessibility issues.
Is it acceptable for storage as is, or is that part of the plan to provide climate control in the basement?
Yeah, it is acceptable for storage, and John can speak more to the conditions of what that new basement will be.
Both of the new construction areas, the addition to the library and the new office building, are priced with full basements underneath as conditioned space, but unfinished. So depending on the construction method and where the insulation is, those basement walls may be concrete, if the insulation's on the outside, or they may be sheetrocked if it was ICF with insulation both inside and out. It's insulated, the heating system is there to make it conditioned space, but there's at the moment no plan other than for the office building, the utilities would be there, heating plant, IT, and storage.
And to follow up then, the square footage of those basements is not included in the square footage that you mentioned here because it's non-conditioned.
That's correct. Those square footages that were mentioned were gross. Those were the footprint of the addition.
I see.
Not the usable interior floor area, but the footprint of the outside walls.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, the basement in the municipal building would be 4,840 square feet approximately, so it's a full basement under the whole structure. The basement underneath the library addition is almost 4,000 square feet. So that space is not included in the numbers you saw there because it is space. Potentially, we could, when we're doing that, we could put in an elevator shaft. So down the road, we could use it if we wanted to,
right, yeah.
but that's something we need to consider. But it is space. We were told by different people that why aren't you considering a basement? It's relatively inexpensive, so we put it in.
During the discussion for the complex, I didn't hear anything mentioned about the cost of the equipment that goes into each one of the buildings. What would, how would that impact the tax rate, number one? Number two, what is the tax implication on the addition to Mastway School that the townspeople did not vote on, but it was approved by the school superintendent, as I understand? That has to be paid for by the three communities. And number three, what's the tax implication going to be with the new middle school that will be approved?
Okay, back to number one, was about equipment. So if you're asking about equipment like heating, air conditioning, et cetera, that's in the price. If you're asking about
The furniture.
Furniture, okay. Furniture for the office building, there is very little included with soft costs for that building. For the most part, in fact, almost exclusively, the plan is that the people that are working in the current town hall get the furniture that they have moved to the new building. And that's it for the office building. For other equipment in the office building, like in the conference rooms, audio-visual equipment in there, that's priced into this. The IT equipment in the building is priced into this. Those were by owner costs, but we got prices from vendors and they're included.
Video? The videos for surveillance?
Security,
cameras?
for controlled access, for controlling the doors, for card or key punch access to the buildings. That's a by owner cost, and we got prices from vendors, and that's in here.
Window treatment?
Security cameras, that's in here. Window treatment for all the windows is included. Fire extinguishers is included. The security system is included.
Telephones?
Telephones are included. There is a generator for the office building, backup generator included in this price. And then for the library, window treatment, fire extinguishers, AV equipment, et cetera, is in this. What's not in this is shelving, new shelving and new furniture. The first estimate for that was $76,000. After the $60,000 is taken from the library capital equipment, library capital reserve fund, there will be about $66,000 left in that. And that has been used for equipment in the library. So it's been used for shelving, used for furniture, et cetera. So obviously they're not going to be able to buy $76,000 worth of furniture with $66,000 in that fund. But initially they're not going to have books to fill all those shelves anyway. Anything else on equipment?
Nope. I don't think so.
Then
This third question?
Next, the second question.
Post to 1 second.
The second question was about additions to Mastway, and some of the additions to Mastway, I know the front of the building, that came from federal government.
Yeah. Pay for that.
And then the rest of it, Scott, can you tell us how that was paid for?
It's my understanding the rest of it, I think it was about $1 million. They actually took that out of their operating budget. So there was no special warrant article, they just took it out of the operating budget as an expense. They kind of did the same thing with the middle school, with the renovations. They were, I don't remember what the number was, but they're funding it through an operating expense, not through a warrant article. In terms of the middle school expense, it's about $46 million. They're gonna ask for it not this coming March, but the March afterwards. I do not know what the implications that gonna be in tax rate for us as a town, so. Did that cover all your questions, Mr. Barney? You don't like the answers, I know that, but, you know.
No, it's the answers I expected, but I think the voters have to look at the big picture to see what the entire implications will be each year, because all we're given right now is just what your tax rate will be only for the construction. Because there's going to be a huge increase in operating costs, because there's going to be more personnel that probably will be hired, there will be more equipment that will be requested, and that's all going to raise the total tax, and I'm concerned about the people's ability to pay when you put in $4+ million for the town of Lee, plus God knows what will be passed for the middle school. And someone has to pay for it, and that's the taxpayers.
Oh, definitely, but the thing is, oh,
I was gonna say, I can talk to some of what he
Oh.
has raised.
okay, go ahead. I'll speak
First,
after.
for increased operating costs for the buildings, there is expected to be increased operating and maintenance, and that includes the expectation that there'll be an additional half-time or 20 hours per week maintenance person. That may be an additional part-time, or maybe part-time people that we have now transition to full-time. And that is included in what's shown here that costs 11 cents on the tax rate. That number comes from the previous committee, where it was $47,000+ per year. Plus there's additional insurance for having more buildings, bigger buildings. And that, our insurance company has told us $2,450 per year increase in insurance premium. So both of those put together are practically $50,000, and that's what is this 11 cents that the arrow is pointing to now. For increased personnel, because I just mentioned the maintenance personnel, you can look at increased personnel in kind of 3 categories. Looking ahead in town office, there are possible increases in personnel that have been identified that have nothing to do with whether additional buildings are built or not. They're just based on the need to provide the services. And those 2 are, we have a part-time accounts clerk who, the requirement for that job may increase to where that person becomes a full-time. That has nothing to do with whether buildings are added or not. And then the other one is in the town clerk tax collector's office, and she has identified that she may possibly want to hire an assistant town clerk tax collector, not so that there would be 3 people in the office, but so that there would always be the 2 people available to serve the windows. As sometimes if somebody's out, there's only 1 person there.
But is that gonna be a 5-day-a-week job?
No, that's, I mean, they're only open 3 days a week.
Okay, I noticed I had to stop in the middle of the day to go register this week. Why can't we take those 2 and spread them out?
That,
Okay, we don't have to discuss it, that's
no,
just
I
a hint,
can
I'm throwing it
answer
out
that.
there.
The town clerk tax collector is an elected position, and she.
Which one's that, the one on the right or the left?
The left. She sits on the left.
She sits on the left?
She's the town clerk tax collector, and then the person that sits on the right, Liz Stone, is the deputy town clerk tax collector. The town clerk tax collector is an elected position, and as I understand it, she makes her hours.
Yeah,
So,
she's her own boss.
so she's her own boss.
So,
So you need to talk
so
to her.
the thoughts of having this big building so you could go register your vehicles or your dog or anything whenever you wanted to during the week, that's ixed? If she's making her own, because I actually asked her this week, I said, is this gonna mean more hours? And she went, oh, no. So, where are we going with that?
That has nothing to do with whether she stays in the space she is now.
No, but I'm looking big building, more hours. We're looking at big building, 8 to 3, 3 days a week.
For town clerk tax collector, that's correct.
Yeah, her hours are Monday from 8 till 6, and then 8 to 4 Wednesday and Friday.
Or those hours,
Yeah.
but,
So I would suggest that you come to the deliberative session on Saturday and speak to that, because basically her boss is the legislative body. The selectmen We do not control her. We do not control her hours, or whoever's in that position,
Okay.
not necessarily her.
I didn't realize you were,
But
that was,
she can say, I'm open from 2 to 3 on Friday afternoon, and that's it. That's her
Yeah,
prerogative.
she's-
I don't think she's gonna do that, but
She's elected by you, the voters, by the
I-
legislative body.
okay.
So, Dwight, we didn't even finish your previous question.
No, could I just make a statement, just to add fuel to the fire here about the position? My recollection is that we had one of the current selectmen that was on board, that at the time, the 3 selectmen said that if you increase the pay, the tax collector will be working 5 days a week. And so it was approved that the pay raise was increased, and lo and behold, guess what happens? You have no control. It's determined because it's an elected position unless you change the method of payment. You don't have to pay a salary. You can pay so much per transaction. You can have something completely different.
This really is a subject that is really independent from what we're talking about here. It's a subject that
But it
really
was
should
brought up,
should
so
be
I
brought
thought
up
I
at
would
deliberative
ask.
session. You did, though, ask about increased personnel. And I said there are 3 categories. There are increased personnel that may have, increases in staff that may happen that have nothing to do with whether or not new buildings are built. There's increase in staffing that would happen because of the increased space in new buildings. And then there is also increase in staffing which could happen because of the increase in building space. And that's in the library. And for that, you would have to ask the library trustees. They have identified that looking forward to, by the time you get to 2035, there could be as many as 5 additional part-time personnel, but that's.
That's beyond our control right now. But I
lifespan.
probably will. But I think what should be brought out, we're talking the tax increase, assuming that there is 0 increase in the budget every single year for the next 20 years. That's not gonna happen.
Correct. This is looking only at existing debt service. We have 2 bonds right now, and new debt service and new costs for this project only. And so you're right, that is added to anything that the school district does, anything that happens to any other part of the budget.
Court.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering about the operating budget. We're talking about a much bigger structures, but at the same time, we're talking about double pane windows, much more efficient heating, lighting, I heard LEDs. Had you looked at how those 2 balance?
I think that I mentioned that it was, the increase was conservatively estimated. The increase in operating cost is actually based on what we have now, and then just ratioed for the increase in floor area, without accounting for any increases in efficiency of lighting, heating systems, etc. So it's
I would imagine they'd be appreciable.
So it's a really
I'm hoping.
conservative, worst case sort of simple, crude analysis.
There's a study performed on just the library space in 2010, which I shared on the Facebook group, I can post it elsewhere, that estimated that if things like insulating the walls, putting in double pane glass, insulating the floors and parts of the library were all completed, that the library's energy bill would be cut by 30%. So we're assuming that everything will be as awfully inefficient as it is now, spread across all that square footage. But likely that's not going to happen. Well, not likely. We know that that's not going to be the case with any of the new spaces. And with the old spaces, we have reasonable estimates, 30% reductions.
I think that ought to be pointed out in your literature. I think that might be helpful.
That's what adds up to this 11 cents, and that
Oh.
really is
Part of that.
we just include the worst case.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we've really tried to include as many things as we can to this, so that we're really presenting the real costs. And I should say, John went to great pains to track down all those things that are provided by vendors, like the security system and the key fob. So many calls, so some 30-some items were looked into, and not casually, in pretty great detail.
On one of your slides, you had that you got an estimate from this gentleman here, and then three other cost estimates from 2 other people.
Correct.
But it says in here that you're going to be looking for solicited competitive bids. Who are you looking for competitive bids from? Are we still going to these same big companies? I mean, this is not a big structure. We want to save money. We don't have to have the giant corporation that's running out of Manchester or Portland or anywhere like that. There are local contractors here that do this as a job.
The 2 things are 2 separate things. One is for doing the design. We have, LaValle Bressinger helped us do the conceptual design. And now we're gonna have somebody come and give us drawings, you know, all the mechanicals, all the electrical, everything.
Correct.
When those are, so we're gonna go out to bid for that. So that's one RFP that we're doing. The second RFP is after we have all those particular drawings, so we know exactly what we want, we're gonna go out and ask for construction bids in terms of RFP for that service as well. So there's 2 separate things. So,
One more, you're gonna have, one more time, say those 2 separate things again?
so we're gonna do an RFP
Yep,
to find an architectural firm to do the drawings, the specific drawings, because LaValle Bressinger helped us with the conceptuals.
yes.
So we need somebody to do that. Could be them, could be.
Yeah, we could do
somebody.
that, but somebody else could do it.
Yeah.
The second one is after we have those drawings and we're happy with them, you know, we're all electrical as well.
Correct, you got a set of prints.
Yep. Then we're gonna do an RFP to find out in terms of who can build those particular things. Could be somebody local, could be a big firm, but we have to go out to bid. We just
Okay,
can't say, oh, yeah, Al Nader's gonna do it for us for, you know, we can't do that. It has to go out to bid.
no, so you're looking at the 1.559 as hopefully the end of it, like, we wanna be lower, but if we can come in lower than that, we're gonna go with the, you know,
Yep, because a couple of things we're looking at. One, based on some information you gave us, we're looking at ICF,
that's a good information, that's good.
and also in terms of wood. So
Yeah.
we have to look at both of those particular things. Does everybody know what ICF is?
But I like the basement.
No?
I don't remember what it stands for, but
Stands for insulated concrete form.
yeah.
It's a way of constructing concrete walls with insulation inside and outside, where the insulation is put in place first, and it is the forms in which the concrete is poured in between. So these are really lightweight, giant, almost like giant Lego blocks, except they're a panel on the inside, a panel on the outside, connected with plastic webs, and tongue and groove, and they stack up in all different configurations. And then the concrete is poured in between, and that insulation inside and outside remains. So you're not stripping forms off, you now have the insulation on the concrete.
That's your foundations.
And,
I could do
well,
walls with it.
when I said we got prices for 3 designs from 2 cost consultants. One of the cost consultants was asked to provide a design for both additions being done in ICF from basement up through the above ground, so everything in ICF. And then the other design was ICF or conventional poured for the basement, and wood frame for the above ground. And that is the design that also that LaValle Bressinger priced, and that's the design that the second outside cost consultant also priced. And the prices that we've used here are in the middle of the range of the 4 that we received for those.
Any other question?
Yes.
Control the floor, but I don't remember any new purpose for the annex that was presented.
Yes.
Scott's smiling. Is that a free garage for you, or what? No,
No, that's,
No.
I'll let John say his thing, but,
Okay.
but
A number of possible uses have been identified. Meeting space for committees and commissions, meeting space and storage and display space for Historical Society. I don't know what else. Oh, actually just storage. That building was originally built as basically a garage. It was the first firehouse
Yeah.
of the town. So it was essentially a three-bay garage. And there are additional identified needs for garage storage. Also in that mix is still a question of whether or not it is moved. And there are lots of strong opinions on both sides of that. We have identified in the plan, if it is moved, we're showing where it would be moved to. So it's not as if we decide to move it and have no place to put it. We have priced moving it. That's built into the price of moving it onto a new, it's on a slab foundation, moving it onto a new slab foundation. It's not in the way where it is. The building as it is now is entirely within the 50-foot setback. In fact, you could walk around the back of it with your arms outstretched like this and you're still in the setback. So it could stay there without interfering with any of the parking lot layout. Doesn't interfere. Right now, we have shown the fire cistern as being in that footprint, but it doesn't have to be. And moving it can be left toward the very end of the project.
There's also a variable that we don't control on the committee, which is the Lee Parish House. There's a warrant article on the ballot that we'll be discussing during the deliberative session, and you all get to vote on about postponing the mandate that the legislative body put on removing that building from the purchased property from the church. So we couldn't address that as a committee because the legislative body had said remove it, so it's not counted in any of our plans. Conveniently, it's also fully within, or almost fully within, the setback of that purchased church property. So we also couldn't plan to build anything there because we were honoring the setbacks, wetland setbacks, setbacks from the road, setback from the property line. So it was a thing we weren't going to touch, but that could be available to the town. So do you use the annex as additional space for the Historical Society? Well, the Historical Society may have a building right behind it that the town decides to keep if the Heritage Commission just finds funding or a way to keep that building for different purposes. So it's hard for us to plan around a definite use for every building when there's a big indefinite building that's sort of in play that we could do nothing about. The other variable that's there is that the cost consultants we've talked to, once they all gave us, or we got prices from 2 out of the 3 for moving the building, and one said I just wouldn't bother moving the building. So it's also hard to definitively plan there, but I think once this went out to bid, a person who bid on this would be committed to moving it for whatever they decided to bid for, so we would have a definitive cost then, someone would be committed to doing it. And perhaps the parish house process would be farther along to where planning can be more definite for something like that. But with that variable hanging out, it's been very hard to figure out what to do there.
Now, my smile was because we as a committee have been through probably a year and a half of this. I think this is one of the more contentious issues we've had. I won't tell you numbers, but about half the committee wants to leave it where it is, half the committee wants to move it. And the other big question is, what do you do with it? So I think one of the things that we as a committee would look for is input from the public in terms of what we should do with it. We've had 2 proposals. One of them is to have a controlled burn on it. The fire department says, no, you will not do that. We had another proposal that we blow it up, physically blow it up. I said,
That'd be
no, we
fun.
can't do that either.
Both
So-
are exceptional.
Yeah, yes.
They could be recorded in the town of Lee.
Yeah, considering one came from you, John, so we're looking for more constructive methods to deal with it. So I think we as a committee, personally, I'll just speak for myself, what do you think as a town we should do with it? Should we, move it, repurpose it, leave it where it is? So I think we're looking for some kind of input, so maybe we can get some at the delivery
It
session.
is not historic, is it?
It's 1950, it's our first fire department.
But I mean, is it
says historic to some people here.
registered historic?
No, it's not.
It is not, it could be.
It's not registered.
It's pre-1958, I think 1958. So it's 1950. And last year, in 2018, when these buildings were being submitted, my recollection is that the cutoff date was 1958. So
Thank you.
it's old enough that it could be.
We were dealing with the quandary of what to do with the committees and commissions in the process of the move, and figured that while everything was transitioning there and things were being done, that would probably be a good location for them in that interim period before the town hall is redone. So they need to have a home during that time, so.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. I would like to move it and then make it the home of the committees and commissions. That gives us more space in the town hall. One of the things that John Tappan, bless his heart, you know what that usually means, but he usually comes up with things that other people haven't thought about. And one of the things he came up with is, okay, you've got this nice meeting space, where do you put all the tables and chairs? So you need space for that. So if we were to use that kind of clerk area for that storage of that stuff, that would be a good use for that particular space. But there's different pluses and minuses on moving it, keeping it where it is, and also its use. Yeah, if you have all these tables and chairs and you want to put a dance, because I'm sure that Chuck Cox is going to come, because he said he would, where do you put all those tables and chairs so people can move around? You can't have them in the bathrooms, you put them in here. So,
Yeah, we don't need any tramps at night. Fill up the shed.
Back, there was a, right in the middle
Me?
there was a question. for a while.
Okay, I'm gonna switch subjects a little bit though, so did
Please.
you wanna talk
I have
more
an
about that?
annex suggestion.
All right.
I've always thought, wouldn't it be nice if the summer farmer's market had an indoor space, so if a summer thunderstorm came around, maybe we could use the annex for the,
All right, so I feel like we've been coming to these kind of meetings for, well, if you include the library things, for like 2.5 years. So we're moving on to the deliberative session on Saturday and then a vote. Can people at that meeting change this whole idea and decide not to leave that amount of money in there? I mean, what can happen there? And then going on, it's going to a town vote, and people can vote all of this down still. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
At the delivery session, the subject can't be changed. Of the warrant article.
Yeah, town administrator and I had a conversation about this today. She's gonna check, because the intention of DRA and also the courts is what was the intention of the warrant article. So we're very clear that in terms of any of these dollar amounts, they can say, instead of a bond, I'll give you a bond for $1. You can do that. But intention-wise, so if somebody said, for instance, we don't want to do a municipal building, we want to do everything else but, can they do that? And she's checking on that, because the intent is to renovate buildings and build new. That's the intention. You're still doing that, but you're not doing everything. So she's gonna check on that and let us know. But that's a question, that's an important question, because we're gonna have to know that on Saturday. So if somebody says, just what you're proposing, yes, that's authorized, no, that's not authorized. But they can definitely change the amounts. So, they don't like 4,060,000, they can say, I wanna have it $1, they can do that. So,
All right.
Or the other direction also.
oh, they're in the direction.
Yeah. And
Is legal counsel going to be present on Saturday?
I don't know, I haven't asked for any, you guys?
I don't know.
No, she's checking.
Aren't they present sometimes to help interpret it?
I don't know, I've never asked for them. Are you guys, John?
No.
No, sorry.
I haven't seen
Should we do that so the town doesn't decide to do something that it can't
Well-
legally do?
She's finding out from our legal advisors in terms of what is possible to change those things.
Okay,
So it's an intent. The court looks at the intent of the article, not necessarily the details. So she's looking into what can be changed and what can't. So she has the warrant article. She's going to consult with them to find out what could be changed. So
okay.
Any other questions?
What does the vote have to be, like 2/3?
For the bond vote, it requires 60%.
Okay.
Because we're taking debt. Everything else on the ballot is simple majority. But for the bond, it's 60%. Back when it was town meeting, it used to be 2/3.
any other questions?
Is there anything for a deliberative session that you think, I'm gonna have to do this all again? And I can say this all again, but some of you have already heard it twice, and I bet a third time is gonna be too much for some folks. So is there anything I'm missing, or that you'd like to hear emphasized more, or that should be included? So things that may not be questions that you want clarified now, but how can I improve?
Well, I have one question, just because I think there ought to be at least something in there. Let's assume the bond passes. You put a shovel in the ground when, and you complete it when? Are we talking about a 3-year program, or are we talking about a 2-year program? But I think there should be some estimate of, if this happens, this is the length of the project in calendar time.
Scott's discussed that we would have to have 2 RFPs go out. So an RFP for the final schematic designs and an RFP for the construction. And town committees are not known for their speed, so that's a factor. We have to be realistic about the estimate.
I understand that, but still, it's an RFP.
Yeah.
You tell them the
We can do
turnaround time you expect for the RFP,
We can put a schedule.
and
Yes.
you put a project plan together, that's all.
Yeah, so I think we'll
You're
put
right.
together estimates on that.
We can put a slide together that just says, that, you know.
It's a guesstimate.
procure,
Yeah, it's, if this happens, here's where we are.
construction,
Eric had a question on that.
Occupancy.
Eric?
Would that be somewhat be determined by the bond, the timing of the bond? When you
No,
take the
actually,
bond
actually, it
out?
would be just the other way around. That you want to time the bond to when you need the money.
So how much of those numbers gonna change though if we have a lag period between now and the time that if it passes, getting all the RFPs and everything else? I think that's Terry's question is, when is this, so what's the dead date for this to start? So that we have a better idea of what a bond is gonna cost us. The difference between 3.15 and 3 point whatever, interest is a lot on a $4 million or $3 million bond.
We need the schedule in order to time the financing. The financing is not, or the bond, is not written into the warrant article, the timing of it. So it's the select board that then has the freedom or the responsibility for getting that fund at the appropriate time with whatever is the best deal they can find. It's not necessarily the bond bank, but that's what we've listed. For the timing of the bond, a significant difference in the shape of the payments that were listed is whether or not the bond is taken out in the first half of the fiscal year or the second half. Because the payments there are 2 payments a year. The first, after approximately 6 months, is an interest payment. And then at the 1-year mark is a principal payment and an interest payment. So if the bond is taken out in the second half of the fiscal year, then that fiscal year, there is no payment, because the first repayment will be interest, and it comes in the next fiscal year. So that would take the shape of the bar graph that was shown, and that first bar would disappear, And the second bar, the orange part would be a little bit higher, because it would be not a interest payment for the full amount plus the reduced amount. It would be interest payment for the full amount for the full 12 plus months.
Eric,
And from Bond Bank, actually, the first payment, in this case, this is based on their schedule for the June 2019 sale. And that first interest period is 215 days, so the first one is longer than 6 months.
Eric, you saw the town has money. So as soon as, if this project would pass, we would immediately have funds available from the reserves to start the process of soliciting competitive bids for the engineering work. So the project could start immediately, or fairly quickly, and get that whole process going. And get them on board and be paying them while we're working on getting the bond application done and getting that procured as to how we want to sequence the bond and everything else. But we would have money to actually get the engineering work started.
Yeah, we don't have the total for that money on the slide, but we do in the handouts. So that's the $565,500 that you see. So the town has, that's cash the town can work with
I
immediately.
understand that, I think, and I don't want to put words in Carrie's mouth, but my concern would be coming up with a punch list that needs to be done and what the timing is so that you've got that somewhat couched in, you know, a time frame to start the process and then an ending point to get those RFPs in, so, because the prices are not gonna get any cheaper. So
Yeah, we'll work,
the
we'll
longer you
work on the
wait-
slide as a schedule.
So who's making that decision is my question. Is it the select board or is it the committee?
One of the
or-
things that John's been tracking, Wolfboro is doing a new library, and he's been tracking that kind of closely. So in terms of, he can speak to this more, but in terms of, he's kind of seen what they've been doing in the time frame. So I'm thinking, personally, I think if we were to go and get those 2 RFPs completed and start construction sometime in November-ish, something like that possibly, so 6 months after we started it. But that's something that John's been tracking. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I think Carrie Brown brought this up, is one of the things we've built into here, there's a cost for getting the bond itself. And one of the things we looked at is in terms of getting bands. Bands are bond anticipation notes. So basically, don't take the whole bond amount at once. Take it when you need it. And to that point, we would need a schedule. So let's say we split it up into 3, you know, $1 million, $1 million, $1.5 million or something like that. That way, we're gonna save money. Each additional bond anticipation note is gonna cost us an additional $2,000. But if you weigh $2,000 against not having to pay interest on $4 million or $1.5 million, that saves the town money. So thank you, Mr. Brown, for, I think I'm putting credit where credit's due, but I think you brought it up first, so that's something we looked into. But the price for doing the bond council and those 3 disbursements is already in that cost. If we choose to do just 2, we're gonna save $2,000. It's something, but yeah.
So it doesn't really answer my question. My question is who's responsible for coming up with that and approving it with that time frame? Is it this committee? Who's gonna be in charge?
We're going to develop it, most likely, and then we're going to ask the selectmen if they're interested in, you know, following that particular schedule. So, we haven't talked about it, the board hasn't talked about it, but I would think we would develop the schedule and then present it to them and see if they're in agreement with that, so we can move forward. I'm getting a few nods, so that's not a decision, because this is not a board meeting.
This is not a board meeting.
So, but that would be the general, in my view, that would be how we would proceed. Gord?
I think
Yeah.
Chuck's is.
Yeah, I guess I haven't heard anything about the undesignated fund balance as we talked about in the past, and whether this has been considered and where we are sitting in the town.
The undesignated fund balance is a little bit more than $2 million. One of the things that we've been told is when we go out for a bond, they're going to be looking at our financial liability. Right now, we're in A3, which is pretty good. But the idea at this moment is not to use any of it. because the more that you have saved in that particular fund, better financially you look from the outside world. So there's no plans to use any at this particular time?
We're on the lower end of,
The interest rate?
no, as the treasurer of the town, I'm happy where we're at with it. I get nervous when we attack it like we do. But as Scott pointed out, we need to be very careful because we want to go into the debt market. So I think this year the selectmen are kind of, being careful there while we go into the debt market. And then after that, we can, maybe be a little more liberal with using it. But right now, it's protecting our rating with getting a good interest rate on the bond when we go for the debt.
That would lower the interest rate that you'd have to pay if you're at a better.
Right, I mean, they can look at you and go, you don't have any money to pay the bond. We're raising your interest rate, so.
And it also depends in terms of rates we're going. The last sale, was it 3.25?
If you go back a year and a half,
Yeah.
it was high twos.
Mm-hmm.
And then this past June, it was 3.24. And then just a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was 3.05. And the number that we're using here in the example was 3.5. If you look at interest rate, as the interest rate changes, of course your total interest that you pay is proportional to the interest rate. But when you look at the effect on the tax rate and the effect on taxes, the interest rate is a small part of that, because the principal payment stays the same, and those other things like increased O&M, et cetera, those all stay the same. So it's not as if a change from 3% to 4% is it's a 1/3 increase in interest rate, but it's not a 1/3 increase in tax rate at all, nothing close. Paul?
Yeah, you might consider adding and I realize it's conceptual, maybe a few more slides or commentary with the municipal office building in terms of how those spaces, the spaces that the staff had in mind and you have in mind, although we're not sure exactly how that we configured, it might be helpful to kind of explain what the inner workings are of that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really did get glossed over was the idea of the security of the building, the public parts, the idea, and yeah, we missed that. The idea is that there's vestibule into a lobby, which is public. There are public bathrooms accessible from the lobby, and in the lobby there are service windows, like what there is for the town clerk, but also for the selectman's office, for the town secretary, and for planning, zoning, and building, for the planning and zoning administrator. So when the public comes in to the lobby, they would go to one of those service windows. The person that comes in may have a reason to go to meet with town administrator or someone else in the building, and they would be buzzed in. The door, access door would be, and that's part of what was priced in the security features, that access door to go into the staff working areas is a secure door that has to be, so you'd have to be buzzed in through that. And part of the rationale, additional rationale for that is that the lobby, the public bathrooms, and the large conference room, which is off of the lobby, with security doors and code access or card access, could be made available to committees and commissions for after-hours use. So a committee or commission chair with either their pass card or code could get into the public area, could use lobby, bathrooms, and conference room but wouldn't have access to the rest of the building.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that type of thing would, I think that would
Right.
have value.
We skipped that.
Oh, just to let people know, we've consulted with the police chief about security, we've consulted with the fire chief about fire issues, we've also consulted with the planning and zoning person about setbacks and things like that. So we've been utilizing those experts in town about things about the project, so that we're kind of trying to uncover all those gotchas, because there's gonna be gotchas. So we're trying to do as much as we can ahead of time, and the group has spent an awful lot of work, done an awful lot of work, and spent an awful lot of time on this, so. I think they're kind of waiting to see what happens vote time. But
The cost of those security features is in the cost.
Did anyone talk with the highway department about plowing?
Yes.
yes, we did. The
Yes.
previous highway person and the present one as well.
Okay.
So,
It's not fully resolved.
yeah.
That is one of the details of this might change a little bit, because we have talked about where is snow piled. And for one of the parking lots,
Curbing?
we also talked about curbing. And for one of the parking lots, the people in the highway department looked at it and said, oh, we'll pile the snow there. And it's one of the areas for the future expansion of a building.
Yeah. So.
So,
And we're also, in terms of we're trying to make it so everything drains toward the road, not toward the bog. So we've got things in place, there's a swale that we put in. So that's something we have to do some more work on, but we've looked at things like that as well, so.
I see you have a generator for the town, well, municipal building, but what about the library? That's a big space too, and nowhere to go on. I'm just thinking,
well, okay.
I have no idea what the cost is.
From the architect, the generator that was sized was just over half of the full electrical service to the municipal office building. And it was envisioned as being for the municipal office building to keep those functions going during power failure. We did not, the costing for that, I think, is probably generous. I mean, we got a quote from a local company. We didn't go out to find the lowest possible. And we did not put in a price for a generator for library or any of the other buildings. It's
We could.
open issue.
Well, I'm just thinking that's the next biggest building, and you could potentially have things going on if the power goes out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember, what did you get? The municipal building was 30,000?
No, it was 40 to 45. And that,
Yeah, the difference is the municipal building will have three-phase power, and that's more expensive usually. The library will not, as far as I know, right now, we're not planning on three-phase power in the library.
that was a fairly expensive generator. There was a diesel generator, sound attenuation cabinet outside, 48 hours of fuel supply, so it could run at full load for 2 days without service. So that it would keep, that's more than enough to keep town hall functions going.
I just have, I'm very much in favor of doing all of this at the same time. I do remember some of the other meetings, it was brought up to do parts at a time and different phases. And I'm just wondering at the deliberative session, if people start bringing that kind of stuff up, or just that you're prepared to give good reasons for doing it all at once.
Yeah, and I think once Julie gets us an answer on whether or not that needs to be debated, so we'll need to address one, can it be changed at all? So is it worth debating, as in can we change the warrant article?
Well, they can debate all they want, but if you can't change the warrant article in terms of that particular wording, you can only change the numbers.
Yeah.
But in terms of the wording, if we find out that we're being given advice that you can't change that.
I mean, you heard during the presentation, Cord brought up, when we went out and got all the estimates were prepared by our architects, as well as these construction construction consultants were based on procuring the services and doing the project at once for the new construction work. It's, you know, it's all one general conditions, and so we can discuss that it's the most cost-effective and efficient way to do the work, but if you're trying to just cleave off chunks of the project and not do them, that's totally different versus doing it all, but thinking, parsing it out saves money. It actually doesn't cost more.
So, I know some of the downsides of waiting or voting no were covered here. But I know that usually some question about, well, why are we doing this at all? And why can't we just make do with what we have? Yeah, I know you addressed if we renovate in order to be compliant with laws, we actually lose space. But one thing, I've followed these discussions for the past few years, one thing that always kind of, you know, clutches my heart is, as long as we're out of compliance with ADA, the town could be sued. And there's a whole bunch of costs right there, and rushing and scrambling. So, you know, I don't know if you want to add anything more about, you know, if we don't do this, interest rate goes up, building costs go up, we continue to run the risk of getting sued. I don't know.
I'm not in favor of scare tactics, but maybe someone else is.
That's one of the reasons that we've shied away from it, is that we've wanted to avoid sounding, you know,
The sky is falling.
yeah, it's sounding like Chicken Little, but it is a real risk, and I think it would be wonderful if folks brought things like that up that we maybe don't feel comfortable bringing up ourselves.
So you're tossing it back to me.
I'm not saying that as a committee member, I'm saying that
Yeah.
as a citizen. I
Yeah.
think people should
No, I
bring
get
that up
it,
who
I
are,
get it.
yeah. But I can bring up that it does expose the town to liability. Calculating what that liability is difficult. So saying, oh, it's gonna be X number of dollars if we were sued is a very hard claim to make. So, but it does open us up to liability, that's for sure.
Well, Department of Justice in its guidance for ADA points out in one of the pieces of literature, points out that it recognizes that municipalities don't have unlimited pockets. And their sources of funding go up and down. And so they may not be able to fix everything at once. But from Department of Justice's viewpoint, what's important is that the municipality has a plan, and that it's working that plan. So if the municipality has a plan which fixes all of ADA needs within a certain time, and it's budgeting for that and doing that, then you look pretty good. If you have no plan, then you have a problem.
It is 8:30, and it's snowing. So, thank you for everybody showing up.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's at 9 AM on Saturday at the Massway School.
If any other questions come to mind, please visit leadtowncenter.org.